I went to CVS for cold medicine and saw my fiancée at the counter with a guy hugging her from behind. She texted me, "I'm still at the dentist," when she turned around and saw me. I didn't expect anything unusual that afternoon. I only stopped by CVS because I was sick and needed something strong enough to break the fever creeping into my bones. It was the middle of a weekday, quiet, boring, and predictable. All I wanted was cold medicine so I could go home, lie down, and drift off for a few hours. Renee had texted me earlier saying she was still at the dentist getting some long procedure work, so I figured I would grab what I needed and leave without thinking about anything else. The sliding doors parted and that familiar sterile smell of detergent and citrus hit me. I headed straight toward the medicine aisle with no intention of staying longer than necessary. My head floated, my throat burned, and I just wanted to sleep. I picked up the strongest cold relief box I could find, turned around in a daze, and that's when everything inside my life snapped like a branch under weight. I saw Renee, not in scrubs, not looking tired from a long dental appointment, not even pretending to be busy. She stood at the front counter, leaning back into a man who had his arms completely wrapped around her waist, hugging her from behind as if they were a couple shopping for weekend snacks. His chin rested on her shoulder. He had this comfortable closeness with her that took time to build, not something that forms from casual interactions. Renee laughed at something he whispered, a light, carefree laugh I hadn't heard from her in months. For a moment, I assumed the fever was messing with my vision. I blinked several times, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. But the scene didn't change. She was there. He was there. They were together. Then my phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out with one shaky hand. A message from Renee popped up. "I'm still at the dentist. The anesthetic is making my jaw numb. I'll call you later." She sent that text while a man she hadn't even mentioned to me held her like a long-term partner. My heart didn't break in some dramatic fashion. It just fell silent, as if refusing to respond. Everything inside me slowed down to a crawl. I could hear the beeping scanner at another register, the faint music overhead, and the soft conversation of two elderly women behind me. It all blurred into background noise while the image of Renee and that man sharpened. The guy shifted his arms and leaned down, pressing his lips against the side of her head in a way that made it unmistakable that they were intimately involved. She reached up and touched his hand with a familiar affection, still unaware I was standing 30 feet away. I didn't hide. I didn't step back. I didn't duck behind shelves. I walked toward them. My feet moved on instinct, steady and calm. The surreal nature of the moment gave me a strange sense of control, like I had stepped outside my own body and was watching everything unfold from above. Renee turned around, probably to grab her receipt, and saw me. Her entire face dissolved. She froze with her mouth slightly open, the color draining, eyes widening so fast I heard a tiny gasp escape her throat. The shopping bag nearly slipped from her fingers. The man behind her didn't understand at first. He kept his arms around her waist and looked at me with a polite, confused expression that lasted maybe 1 second before he sensed the tension in her body and slowly released her. Renee tried to speak. Nothing came out. The cashier went still. The beep of the register stopped. A couple near the gift card rack turned their heads. The man finally stepped to the side. He wasn't embarrassed. He wasn't defensive. He looked calm, almost too calm, and he addressed her by a nickname I had never heard in my life. It hit me harder than anything she had done physically. Nicknames don't come from nowhere. Nicknames come from time, routines, and intimacy. Renee whispered something to him, but I heard none of it. My ears were still ringing from the one simple fact hitting me like a brick. She texted me she was at the dentist while this man had his arms wrapped around her inside a CVS in broad daylight. I didn't approach her to shout. I didn't want to fight. I wanted truth, and the fastest way to get it was to keep everything right where it was. Public, open, impossible to bury under excuses. Renee stepped toward me with trembling hands, mumbling that she could explain. She pointed toward the door, wanting me to follow her outside, probably hoping to spin some half-story in private. I didn't move. I stayed rooted in that spot because silence and a calm stare would fracture her lies faster than anything else. Then the man looked at me, nodded, and said something that turned the entire situation on its head. He mentioned a plan they had later that week, something she clearly didn't expect him to bring up in front of me. Her reaction gave it all away. She snapped her head toward him with panic in her eyes, shaking it slightly, as if trying to warn him. That was the first major shift. It wasn't a random guy flirting with her. It wasn't a moment of weakness. It wasn't a misunderstanding. This was planned, repeated, organized. The cashier discreetly stepped back from her register and pretended to reorganize bags, but she was listening. The couple near the gift cards was fully invested. Even a kid near the greeting cards had stopped flipping through Pokemon packs. Renee's voice finally broke through her panic. and she pleaded for me to come outside with her. She kept insisting there was a misunderstanding. She couldn't hide that she was terrified. Not terrified of losing me. Terrified of what I already knew and what I could expose. I didn't move. I wanted the truth handed to me without negotiations. The man watched both of us, then exhaled and admitted something that dropped the entire room into complete silence. He said she told him she was previously engaged, but the engagement had ended months ago. According to him, I was the ex who kept texting her trying to get her back. He even added that he felt sorry for me because she described me as someone who didn't know how to let go. Renee's legs nearly buckled. That statement changed everything. Now the betrayal wasn't just personal. She had rewritten our relationship to him. She created a whole new identity for me without hesitation. I didn't respond to her or him. I simply placed the cold medicine on the counter, nodded once to the cashier, and walked out of the CVS doors without saying a single word. The quiet exit wasn't dramatic. It wasn't emotional. It was the only way I could keep control of the situation without letting chaos carry me. Renee followed me outside, grabbing my arm and begging for a chance to explain. Her voice cracked. She kept saying she didn't want a scene in front of strangers. She was terrified of losing control of the narrative. That was obvious. She tried to say that the man meant nothing, that they only met for lunch sometimes, that she hadn't told him about me because she wanted to handle things slowly. None of the excuses mattered. She had been hugged, kissed, and called a private nickname inside a store while lying to me through a text message. The more she talked, the clearer it became that she didn't even know which version of her own lie she should stick to. I didn't say anything. I just unlocked my car, got inside, and closed the door. She tried to open the passenger side, but I locked it before she could pull the handle. She knocked on the window with shaking hands, but after a few seconds she stepped back, watching me drive away. My fever was still there, but now my head throbbed for a different reason. The cold medicine sat forgotten at the counter. I didn't care. I drove home with a feeling that was not sadness and not anger. More like the realization that the entire foundation of the person I lived with had been built on unstable ground. Renee called me 7 times on the way home. I didn't answer. She texted long paragraphs that shifted between apologies, denials, explanations, and dramatic pleas. None of it matched what I had seen with my own eyes. When I arrived at our apartment, I sat in the parking lot for a long minute, staring at the steering wheel, letting the quiet swallow me. My life hadn't collapsed. It had simply revealed itself. I went upstairs, opened the door, and the apartment looked exactly the same, but nothing inside it felt familiar anymore. Her shoes by the wall, her cardigan on the chair, her half-finished smoothie in the fridge. All of it felt like props left behind after an actress walked off stage. My phone buzzed again. It was her sister Marta. She wrote, "I need to talk to you alone. Please don't tell Renee yet. I know something she's been hiding." I didn't answer her either. But that message planted the first seed of what would become the next explosive shift, something that would make the CVS moment look almost small compared to what came afterward. The day wasn't over. Not even close. Everything was only beginning to unravel. I stayed inside the apartment with the lights off for nearly an hour after Marta's text, not because I needed darkness, but because silence made everything sharper. It felt like someone had ripped the surface off my life, leaving the wiring visible. Every sound felt amplified. Every vibration of my phone felt heavier. When Marta texted again, it wasn't the timid message of someone afraid. She wrote, "Adrian, please. I can explain before she gets to you." Before I could even process the meaning, someone knocked 3 times at the door. Not a faint knock. Firm, confident, urgent. For a second, I considered ignoring it, but it came again faster, accompanied by a familiar voice. "Adrian, it's me. It's Marta. Please open." I hesitated, but curiosity pushed me to the door. When I opened it, Marta stepped inside immediately, glancing behind her as if Renee had followed her. Marta and Renee looked nothing alike. Renee always carried herself with polished confidence, while Marta had a nervous, jittery energy, as if she constantly anticipated problems. Her hair was tied in a messy knot, and she clasped her hands as she paced the living room. She didn't sit down. She didn't breathe. She just spoke. "You need to know something." Today wasn't the first time. Her voice didn't shake from guilt. It shook from exhaustion, like someone tired of holding a secret too long. I didn't interrupt her. She didn't need encouragement. The words spilled out of her with the momentum of someone who had rehearsed this confession many times. "She cheated before," Marta said. "Before you even got engaged. Before you moved in together. She told us she ended it. And we believed her because she promised she was serious about building a future with you. She begged me not to tell you. And my parents made me stay silent because they didn't want to lose the support you gave her." It landed with a heavy, bitter clarity. The CVS encounter wasn't an isolated betrayal. It was part of a routine. Marta sat down finally, placing her elbows on her knees as if she'd been running. Adrian, she's not going to tell you any of this. She's terrified you'll leave before the wedding because she told our parents everything was perfect. They're relying on her financially. She made herself the center of everything. If she collapses, they collapse too. I didn't speak. I only watched her, letting the pieces of the picture rearrange themselves. Marta went on. She didn't go to the dentist. She hasn't gone for weeks. She was with that man. His name is Jonas. I met him once when she accidentally introduced him to me as a family friend. He's not a family friend. They've been meeting for months. Her honesty didn't feel manipulative. It felt like a dam finally bursting. But her confession wasn't the twist. That was just the entry point. The twist hit when the door burst open behind her. Renee didn't knock. She didn't pause. She just barged in with wild eyes, flushed cheeks, and breathless panic. She slammed the door behind her so hard the picture frame above the shoe rack rattled. She pointed at Marta immediately, her voice sharp. Why are you here? What did you say? Adrian, she has no right to. Marta stood up at once, no longer timid. I told him the truth. He deserves the truth. Renee's voice cracked with fury rather than shame. Get out. Get out now. No, Marta said, stepping closer. You think you're protecting everyone, but you're only protecting yourself. I stood there between them like a wall neither of them wanted to climb. The tension spread across the room, thick and suffocating. Renee turned to me, trying to regain control. We should talk alone. Please. She's only telling you things out of jealousy. Marta immediately snapped back. Jealous of what? You think everyone is jealous of you? No one is jealous of losing a good man because they can't control themselves. The room burst into an argument. Not heated yelling, but heavy accusations delivered with precision. Renee claimed Marta wanted to ruin her life. Marta claimed Renee had been playing both sides for years and dragging the whole family through the mud. I stayed silent, letting them unravel themselves. Silence is louder than shouting. Eventually, Renee tried to approach me, but I stepped back and that small movement broke her posture. She froze mid-step, realizing how far the distance between us had grown in a single afternoon. Adrian, she whispered, give me a chance to explain. Marta interrupted again. Explain what? That you lied to Jonas about breaking up months ago? Or that you told Felix you were living alone? Or that you've been using the dental clinic as your excuse to disappear? I didn't catch the name at first. Felix. That wasn't the CVS guy. I stopped Marta. Who's Felix? Renee's face drained faster than at CVS. I don't know who she's talking about. Marta let out a tired, frustrated laugh. She does know. She knows exactly who Felix is. Renee lunged forward and grabbed Marta's wrist hard. Marta shoved her back and Renee stumbled. The tension erupted physically now. I stepped between them. Renee regained her balance and shouted, You're trying to destroy me, Marta? Why would you even bring up Felix? That was enough. The truth slipped. Felix, I repeated. Renee covered her mouth, realizing she had confirmed exactly what she tried to hide. I said nothing. I didn't need to. Marta sighed, tired of carrying it alone. Felix is the reason she stopped going to your work events. She met him before Jonas. He's younger. She told me it was temporary. She said it didn't mean anything, but it continued even after she started seeing Jonas. The betrayal wasn't a single line, it was a web. Renee broke down into frantic explanations. She claimed Felix pursued her. She claimed Jonas misunderstood her. She claimed none of them mattered. She claimed she was confused. She claimed she was stressed. She claimed anything that might soften the impact. But it wasn't confusion. It was coordination. The truth was scattered across her excuses like broken glass. Eventually Marta stepped out, saying, I've done my part. She left without another word. Renee collapsed onto the couch, burying her face in her hands. I didn't sit next to her. I didn't put my hand on her back. I didn't lean in. Instead, I asked one question. Did you ever end anything with anyone? She looked up at me with swollen eyes and gave the most revealing answer of the entire night. I was going to. Not I did. Not it ended. Not I promise. I was going to. Her timeline never matched reality. Her plans never aligned with her actions. Her words never aligned with her behavior. She had lived parallel lives and assumed no one would ever compare notes. I stood by the door and told her I needed air. She begged me not to leave, but I walked out anyway, letting the door lock behind me. Outside, the cold evening air sobered me. My fever remained, but the shock had burned away most of the lethargy. I walked without direction until I reached the parking lot. I got into my car, but didn't start it. I just sat, breathing, letting everything rearrange itself. Then my phone rang. Not a call, but a video message from an unknown number. A man appeared on the screen, sitting in what looked like a small, cluttered living room. He had the kind of tired expression someone gets when they are about to say something they don't want to say, but feel obligated to. He introduced himself. Hey, Adrian. My name is Felix. I think we need to talk. My stomach dropped. Felix. The second man. The one I hadn't seen yet. The one who wasn't Jonas. He continued. I didn't know she was engaged. I swear. She told me she got out of a long relationship. I only found out because she came to my place today screaming at me, blaming me for something. She was furious. I recorded it in case she tried anything. I'm sending it to you. The screen cut to shaky footage. Renee outside a small apartment complex, yelling that Felix had ruined everything and made everything fall apart. She screamed that now the other one knows, and that the timing is destroyed. Not feelings, not guilt, not remorse. Timing. Everything about her tone focused on timing. The double life she built wasn't emotional confusion. It was scheduling. The video ended. Felix sent another message. If you want to meet, I'll tell you everything. I didn't respond, but I saved the video. Not as evidence. Not for revenge. Just as a reminder of what had already become undeniable. I sat in the car until midnight before going back inside. Renee was still on the couch, looking broken but calculating. She tried to get up when she saw me, but I lifted my hand and she sat down again. I told her I needed space. Real space. Not an hour-long walk. Not a cooling-off period. Physical distance. She begged me to stay until the wedding to avoid family humiliation. That sentence was all I needed to hear. She wasn't fighting for me. She was fighting for her image and financial stability. I packed a bag, took my keys, and left. She followed me down the staircase barefoot, pleading, crying, clutching the railing as if losing balance. When I reached my car, she grabbed my arm. I peeled her hand away gently, got inside, and closed the door. She stood there in the cold, watching me pull away. But even in her tears, there was calculation behind her eyes. Because she knew the collapse had already begun. And when people who manipulate for a living start losing control, they don't fall quietly. They drag everyone with them. I left the apartment that night with a bag of clothes and drove without direction for almost an hour before finally stopping at my friend Lionel's place. Lionel didn't ask for details. He saw my expression and knew something was broken. He just handed me a spare key and told me the couch was mine. I slept badly, not because of the physical exhaustion or the fever, but because my mind kept replaying the CVS scene, the argument between the sisters, the video from Felix, and Renee screaming outside that apartment building. Each memory felt like a separate punch. The next morning, I woke up on Lionel's couch to 13 missed calls, 17 texts, and 2 voice messages from Renee. She kept insisting she could fix everything. She kept trying to pull me into a conversation I didn't want to have. Each message carried a mixture of pleading, bargaining, and emotional pressure. She never once admitted the full truth. She just kept shifting the narrative. I left my phone on silent and stepped outside for fresh air. My fever had finally loosened its grip, replaced by a heavier clarity. I decided I wasn't going to spend my days piecing things together. The truth was already spilling out on its own. I didn't want detective work. I didn't want revenge planning. I just wanted the truth to fall in front of me without being twisted. And oddly enough, it did. Around noon, Lionel called me from inside and said someone was downstairs asking for me. I expected Renee. Instead, when I walked out to the curb, I saw a car parked crookedly, and Felix stepped out. He looked younger than I expected, maybe 24, with an expression caught somewhere between embarrassment and frustration. He didn't approach aggressively. He approached like someone carrying something heavy he wanted to drop off and be done with. I'm not here to start anything, he said. I'm here because she came after me again this morning. She's losing it. I didn't invite him inside. We stood next to the parked car, 2 strangers bound only by the fact that the same woman had built lies around both of us. Felix rubbed his face with both hands. She said you ambushed her at CVS. She said I ruined her plan. She didn't tell me what plan, but she was furious that everything collapsed. She's trying to get ahead of this. She wants to control what you know. What did she tell you about us? I asked. He sighed. That you were her ex. That you were obsessed. That you wouldn't let go. Hearing it from him, calmly, quietly, made it sink in deeper. Renee hadn't improvised. She'd rehearsed. Felix swallowed hard and said something that changed everything again. She asked me to stay quiet about seeing her. She asked me to pretend we were just friends meeting for advice. I told her no. She threatened to tell people I was harassing her. He looked at me with tired eyes. That's when I realized she'd done this before. I didn't doubt him. Not anymore. Felix handed me his phone. I want you to see where she's been meeting me, and where she met Jonas. It's the same place. He pulled up the location, an apartment complex 15 minutes away. The same one from the video he sent the night before. The same place I saw in the background behind Renee as she screamed at him. He said, she used to come twice a week. Different times. Different excuses. She kept saying she was overwhelmed at home and needed breaks. I didn't know she was engaged. When I found out, I ended everything. She didn't take it well. He wasn't lying. He didn't have the posture of someone inventing a drama. He looked like a guy who had been dragged way deeper into chaos than he had signed up for. Felix put his phone back in his pocket. I'm not trying to be in your life. I just want her to stop showing up at my door. We both stood in awkward silence. Eventually, Felix nodded and left. No dramatic exit. No emotional plea. Just a man returning to his life. I got in my car and drove to the apartment location Felix had shown me. I didn't text Renee. I didn't warn her. I didn't want answers from her. I just wanted to see what she had built behind my back. The complex wasn't nice. It wasn't even average. It was one of those older buildings with faded paint and cracked pavement. The parking lot was half full. I parked across from the entrance and leaned back, watching. I didn't expect anything. I just wanted to understand the truth of her routine. An hour passed. Cars came and went. A dog barked from an open balcony. The cold air seeped in through the cracked window. Then her car pulled in. Seeing her step out of the driver's seat confirmed everything. She looked around anxiously, checking every corner as if expecting someone to appear. She wasn't meeting Jonas. She wasn't meeting Felix. She wasn't meeting anyone I recognized. She knocked on a door on the second floor. Moments later, a man opened it. I recognized him instantly. The man who hugged her in CVS, Jonas. He grabbed her wrist and yanked her inside quickly, glancing around the hallway before slamming the door shut. I wasn't surprised he lived there. I was surprised at what happened 20 minutes later. Renee came out first, wiping her face like she had been crying. She held her phone tightly, pacing near the railing. Her breathing looked uneven. She kept checking the parking lot nervously, as if expecting me. I stayed completely still in my car. She didn't see me. Then Jonas stepped out behind her. He wasn't affectionate now. He wasn't gentle. He was angry. They argued. I couldn't hear the words, but their movements spoke clearly. Jonas paced. Renee clutched his arm and tried to calm him. He shook her off. She grabbed his sleeve again. He stepped back and pointed toward her car with sharp motions. Then he said something that made Renee stagger. Her body froze. Her shoulders lowered. She wrapped her arms around herself like she had been exposed. Whatever he said wasn't soft. It wasn't comforting. It wasn't romantic. It was rejection. She walked down the stairs slowly, head lowered, and got into her car. Jonas didn't follow. He slammed the door to his apartment with enough force to echo through the lot. I didn't chase her. I didn't confront her. Instead, I watched her drive away in the opposite direction of home. 5 minutes later, the door opened again. Jonas stepped out with his phone pressed to his ear, pacing the walkway. He wasn't calling Renee. He was calling someone else. The tone of his voice, sharp, irritated, defensive, told me he was trying to get ahead of something. My phone buzzed. A new message from an unknown number. I opened it. A single text. You should know she came to my job and told them things about you. You need to be careful. The message was signed. Jonas. He didn't know I was watching him from below. He didn't know I'd seen everything. But he knew enough to warn me. Renee wasn't losing control. She was fighting to keep it. And she was dragging both of her men into the battle. The collapse had officially begun. I didn't go home that night. I didn't tell Renee where I was. I let silence do the work. Every hour I stayed away, she spiraled harder. My phone showed 30 missed calls by morning, half of them voice messages full of rushed breathing, apologies, and shifting explanations. She alternated between begging and blaming. It was the same rhythm she used every time something threatened her carefully built version of reality. But the truth didn't need my interpretation anymore. It was speaking clearly through everyone else involved. That morning, I made a decision. I didn't want endless arguments. I didn't want long text wars. I didn't want explanations crafted to twist facts. If the truth was going to come out, it needed to happen in one place, in front of everyone, where no one could adjust their story or hide behind selective memory. I spent 2 hours arranging it. A restaurant I knew would give me a private room, a specific time, a simple message to each person involved. Renee, her parents, her sister Marta, Jonas, Felix. I didn't explain details. I simply wrote, we need to clear everything at once. Meet me at 6:30. To my surprise, they all agreed. When I arrived first to the back room, I felt the strange calm of someone who had nothing left to lose. The waiter dimmed the light slightly and asked if I needed anything before the others arrived. I told him water was enough. Renee came first. She walked in with the expression of someone bracing for judgment. Her hair was tied neatly. Her makeup was flawless, almost too flawless, as if she'd been preparing for a performance. She approached the table slowly. Adrian, thank you for meeting. I know things got out of hand. Before she could launch into a crafted speech, the door opened again. Her parents entered. Her mother had a stiff posture. Her father looked tense, his mouth pulled into a thin line. They nodded at me politely, but suspicion lingered in their expressions, as if they had already chosen a side. Then Marta arrived. She didn't greet anyone. She simply sat down, keeping her eyes on the table. The air tightened when Jonas walked in. He looked uncomfortable, like someone forced into a meeting he wished he had avoided. He didn't sit immediately. He stood near the door, hands in his pockets, observing everyone. Lastly, Felix entered. He hesitated when he saw Renee's parents, but he took a seat without comment. Renee's father finally cleared his throat. What exactly is this about, Adrian? I didn't start with accusations. I started with the truth. I explained what I saw at CVS. The hug, the kiss, the lie about the dentist, the text she sent me while standing in the arms of another man. I kept my voice steady. I didn't dramatize it. Renee's mother covered her mouth in shock. Her father's jaw clenched. Renee tried to interrupt. I told you already. I lifted my hand. She fell silent. Then I explained the confrontation at the apartment complex. I described seeing Renee and Jonas arguing outside his door. The anger, the rejection, the way it looked like a breakup rather than a misunderstanding. I explained that Jonas had messaged me afterward, warning me she'd shown up at his job. Renee's parents turned toward Jonas with sharp eyes. He exhaled and finally sat down. I didn't know she was engaged, he said. She told me it ended months ago. When I found out the truth, I told her we were done. She didn't take it well. Renee's mother looked horrified. Before Renee could react, I turned to Felix. He spoke without pressure. I ended things too. She came to my door 3 times this week. She screamed at me this morning. She said Adrian was ruining her life, and Jonas betrayed her. She blamed everyone except herself. Renee's father snapped his gaze to her. Is this true? Renee's voice trembled. They're twisting everything. They don't understand. Marta cut in. Dad, she lied to all of us. She's been cheating with both of them. And before the engagement. And she made me lie for her because she didn't want Adrian to leave. Renee's composure cracked. Marta, shut up. You're making this worse. No, Marta said. You made this worse when you told Felix that Adrian wouldn't leave you alone. And when you told Jonas your engagement ended. And when you told Mom and Dad everything was fine while you were living behind everyone's backs. The room erupted into overlapping voices. Renee's mother demanded answers. Her father asked when everything started. Jonas defended himself. Felix explained his involvement. Marta repeated that she had tried to warn the family long ago. I let them speak. I let it all unfold in front of everyone. And then the final blow came from someone I didn't expect, Renee's father. He leaned back in his chair, eyes cold, expression heavy. We borrowed from Aunt Brenda for the wedding, he said quietly. We agreed to her terms. Renee promised this marriage would stabilize everything. She signed her name on the loan agreement. I hadn't known about the loan. I hadn't known Renee promised anything. Her family kept that hidden carefully. Renee's eyes widened. Dad, don't. He cut her off sharply. You said everything was solid. You said Adrian was committed. You said this would secure the family. You said you just needed us to trust you. Now we find out you haven't been faithful. You lied to both men. You lied to us. And you jeopardized the wedding we can't afford to cancel. Her mother looked like she wanted to cry. Her father looked betrayed in a different way than I did. Not as a partner, as someone who backed the wrong successor. Renee reached for his arm. He pulled it away. Renee, he said, you destroyed this. The room fell dead silent. Renee snapped. Not emotionally, defensively. She turned to me. Why are you doing this to me? The question didn't anger me. It confirmed everything. I stood up slowly and placed the engagement ring on the table. The small sound of it touching the wood echoed through the room like a closing door. I'm not doing anything to you. I'm ending what you already ended yourself. Renee broke completely. Her knees buckled and she slid onto the chair, hands shaking violently. She tried to gather her thoughts, but they scattered faster than she could speak. There was nothing she could adjust, nothing she could twist, nothing she could control. I walked toward the exit. No theatrics, no final speech, just truth. Before I reached the door, Jonas stood up. I'm sorry for my part in this, he said. I didn't know. I won't be contacting her again. Felix nodded as well, adding, me neither. Marta mouthed a quiet thank you. Renee didn't move. I stepped out of the room and didn't look back. Consequences in the days that followed. This part wasn't fast. It wasn't explosive. It was steady, exactly like real life. Renee's parents canceled the wedding to avoid further embarrassment. The deposits were lost. The loan repayment began immediately. Her father refused to cover it alone. He placed the responsibility entirely on Renee. Jonas requested a transfer to another clinic to avoid rumors. Felix blocked her number and changed his address after she showed up twice more. Renee's job found out through her mother's loud conversations at a family gathering. The clinic suspended her temporarily for unprofessional conduct connected to Jonas, who had already filed a report to protect himself. She moved back into her parents' apartment, not as a victim, as someone whose choices finally caught up with her. As for me, I rebuilt slowly. I stayed with Lionel for a week, then moved into a small one-bedroom place on my own. I kept my routine simple. Work, Sleep, quiet evenings. No distractions. No chaos. I didn't need revenge. Life handled that part naturally. I didn't gloat. I didn't reach out. I didn't follow her updates. I just moved forward. Some collapses don't need fire. They fall under their own weight. And this one did.